Greeting, my friends. Patrick Wood here for Technocracy News and Trends. And today's going to be a little bit different because we're having a video format today, and we'll see how this works out. But if it does work out, I'll continue to communicate via video as well as via podcast that is audio recording. Today's going to be a kind of a sober and a not difficult, but it's going to be a sobering conversation that we need to have. So much is going on in the world. Everybody's chasing rabbit trails here and there. If it isn't a virus, it's the vaccine. If it isn't a vaccine, it's something else. It's 5G, it's this, that, and the other. People are chasing after every possible rabbit that I've seen in the last 10 years. And this is not necessarily productive, because when people are chasing after the predetermined rabbits that the global elite want them to chase after, they're not looking at the real target, the real enemy, the real people that are pulling the strings on our global system. And believe me, I'm going to tell you today that I fully believe that the world, including the United States, has been totally punked and panicked by the global elite into voluntarily giving up our economic system that has supported the world for thousands of years. I've never seen anything like this in my life. Probably never will. I don't know what else could happen, but this is the worst possible thing that could happen to the world, is to lose its economic system and have it turned into something else. And I'll tell you what that something else is. It's coming as sustainable development. That's technocracy. I wrote an article recently, a very important article, and I want to show it to you just by title anyway. The Common Roots of Climate Change and COVID-19 Hysteria. I'm not denying that there's a virus, by the way. I know there's something out there that makes people very sick. Not everyone, but a lot of people are getting very sick from it, and I feel bad for them. I'd hate to get it. I'm sure you would too. But that's not the point. The point is, the minute that the coronavirus became enough of an issue that the global elite alarmists could hijack it and use it for their own agenda, it took a totally different turn. And we're going to look at that today. And I encourage you to go to technocracy.news to read, again, the common roots of climate change and COVID-19 hysteria. You're going to find out, I've documented it very thoroughly, you're going to find out that the same people who brought us climate change hysteria, the people that produced the studies at universities and so on that said we're all going to die in 10 years or 12 years and the seas are going to rise and the polar bears are going to die and all that kind of stuff, that whole crowd is the same crowd behind the hysteria that we are suffering under today. The same people who told us under the climate change mantra that we needed to curtail or destroy our economic system so the world can survive, the very same people are telling us that the virus pandemic is going to give us all this death and destruction across the world. And what's the only answer? Shut down your economy. Same goal, same people. Let's connect a couple of dots here. I don't think it's difficult. This is not about the pandemic at this point. It's about the people who have been pushing sustainable development for decades. Those are the same people that brought us technocracy originally and brought it into the 20th century and then into the 21st century. You can read my books to figure that out. I've got one of my books, by the way, in my hand, Technocracy Rising. I encourage you to get a copy of it off of technocracy.news or go to amazon.com. I don't care. You'll find a Kindle version and an audiobook version of my latest book, Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order. So if you don't like to read, you can listen. If you don't like to listen, you can read the Kindle copy, the electronic copy. I don't care. You need to get this information. All Americans need to get this information. Because until we understand the enemy and the nature of the enemy, we will never be successful in fighting against it. Never. This is just a principle of war that's been around for centuries. We cannot deny that today. It just makes common sense too. How can you destroy somebody or how can you get after somebody you don't know who they are? You must know who the real culprits are. And these are the technocrats that have been lurking in the shadows now for at least 25, 30 years. The same people who brought us Agenda 21, the same people who brought us 2030 Agenda, New Urban Agenda, the climate change mantra, the Paris Climate Change Agreement. This crowd, these are the ones that are trying to destroy our economic system. They've said it openly that they were going to do this. It wasn't a threat, obviously, because now it's shut down. I want to read you a little bit out of my book. I don't normally do this, but today is appropriate. And if there's nothing else that we learned from this today, I want you to listen and see what I wrote several years ago in Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. We're seeing this today. On page 230, on page 205, starting at the bottom of the page. Critics are certain to argue the point that these nations are not transforming into technocracies. Let me put my screen up full again. I can only ask, to what degree of transformation would it take for you to change your mind? Today's issue is not necessarily that we have arrived, but rather that we are on the way and may arrive sooner than anyone can imagine. Let me explain. When studying the progression of Nazi Germany leading up to Hitler's assumption of complete power, I have often theorized that there was likely a specific point in time when he realized that he had all the political, military, organizational, and economic power necessary to declare himself a dictator. Hitler had declared his intentions very clearly in his 1925 book, Mein Kampf, which was mostly ignored at the time because Hitler was viewed as a trouble-making rabble-rouser who was serving time in jail for what he claimed were political crimes. But Hitler had a dream and a strategy to get there. Then he embarked on implementing that strategy. In 1933, after he clawed and connived his way into power, he pulled the plug and declared himself dictator. There was nothing anyone could do about it. To oppose him meant certain death or imprisonment. His work and strategy, like moving the pieces on a chessboard, had resulted in a doomsday checkmate. My point is that it didn't happen by accident, or even by a series of random events, where one day he just woke up and thought, I think I'll announce my dictatorship today, maybe after lunch. Rather, Hitler was certainly gathering pieces of his empire all along, analyzing and plotting his victory with excruciating detail. As the necessary assets were lined up in a row under his control, Hitler knew exactly what it would take to get to the top, and he knew that he would know when it arrived. Well, that day arrived, and history was changed forever. Based on this thinking, if today's technocrats are meticulously working toward a scientific dictatorship and applying a specific strategy to get there, wouldn't you think that they have a specific list of criteria that must be met before game over can be called? Wouldn't you think that they are comparing such a list to the actual progress that they are making in the world? Wouldn't you think that they are monitoring their progress and will recognize when the list has been fulfilled? If you can see my point here, then there are only two questions left. When the day comes, will the technocrats have the guts to shut the world down, to shut the old world, to shut the old world order down and simply declare the system as dictator? If so, how long will it take them to act? Just to set the record straight, I've been talking about this now for years and years. This book was published in January 2015. That's over 5 years ago. I have been warning about technocracy, the dangers of it, the structure of it, the people involved in it, the whys, the wheres, the what fors, etc., the plans, the strategies that are in place. And I'll tell you what, you connect the dots here. Don't make me do it. Everything that the technocrats at the UN and in the global elite have been trying to do for all these years, they have accomplished in spades with the advent of the coronavirus. Now again, this has nothing to do with the virus. There is a virus. That's not the question. But the narrative got hijacked. The fire got fanned, blew into a forest fire, and then the entire planet all of a sudden is under this delusion that the only thing possible to do to stop this destructive virus thing is to shut down the economic system. This is what these people have been begging for, in their minds at least, for at least 40 years. And now they've done it because of taking over the narrative of this coronavirus. I call this the Great Panic of 2020. And let me tell you something. It has been a great panic. You know that. I don't need to tell you. Many of you are totally frustrated because you can't go back to work. You can't go to church. You can't do anything. You can't go out. There's no place to go out to dinner or lunch or anything else. You just got to sit in your house and think about things. By the way, that does have some good benefit, possibly. Some people need to sit and think for a while. Maybe they'll get a clue to what's going on. I hope. But here's the deal. The panic that we've had so far is going to pale in comparison to the panic that's coming over the economic system having been crushed. This is not a mistake. This is not an accident. Don't let any politician bully you into thinking, well, how did we know that this was going to happen? Bull. They knew at the top exactly what they were doing. The technocrats who pull the trigger on this, and I encourage you to go read the article again, The Common Roots of Climate Change and COVID-19 Hysteria, the same people that have been calling this for years are calling the shots right now. They're pulling all the strings all over the world. And they've destroyed our economic system. Now, it's not all destroyed all at once everywhere, but the economic indicators that have gone down just in the last 30 days have gone down farther, going back to all the way back to World War II. Never happened this way. Today, the price of oil, at least the near-term contract, the price of oil crashed below zero. Can you imagine this? It crashed down to minus $30 a barrel. Minus $30 a barrel. I don't know how you do that. This has never happened in the history of energy markets ever. Yet it happened today. Folks, things are about to spin out of control, and this is because of the technocrats that have had this predisposition to destroy capitalism and free enterprise altogether so that technocracy can be brought in, that green economy, that Green New Deal, that scientific dictatorship could be brought in above and on top of the ashes of capitalism and free enterprise. And does capitalism have issues? Yes, it does. Crony capitalism is just evil as the day is long. Lots of problems, but they're fixable. Is free enterprise got problems? Probably so. But listen, there has never been an economic system in the history of the world that was not based on free enterprise. The free transaction of goods and services and whatever between people of consenting that consent to that trade. This has always been the way it is. The technocrats aren't satisfied with that. They weren't satisfied in the 1930s. They're not satisfied now. They want control of all production and all consumption, and they want to tell all businesses what they're allowed to make, and they want to tell all consumers what they are allowed to consume. Now, if that's the kind of world you want to live in, then just sit back and do nothing. If that's not the kind of world that you want to live in, now's the time to step up to the plate. I want to encourage you, by the way, too, to go to citizensforfreespeech.org and sign the petition to make an attempt to save our civil liberties in our country. And you realize that the First Amendment is under the most horrific attack it's ever been under, ever. Our right to assembly right now has been absolutely trashed. Our right to the free expression of religion has been trashed. Freedom of the press has been trashed. Freedom of speech. How can you speak if you can't go to a group? The right to redress the government for grievances, gone. You can't even go in there. There's nobody there. I went down to the State House today in Arizona. There's nobody in there. The doors are open and the security guards are there. But the senators and the assemblymen, they all gone home. So who are you going to go complain to? Same thing in City Hall. They're not there. Can't get to them. I have to say this. You probably sense it. But the First Amendment is there in our Bill of Rights for a reason. It could have been second, third, or fourth. I mean, it could have, theoretically. But I discovered, with the help of a friend, a constitutional attorney, the writers of the Bill of Rights put the First Amendment first on purpose. And they put the Second Amendment second on purpose. They never intended that the Second Amendment would come into play in the fundamental construction of our government system. But if communication stops, which is the First Amendment, that's what it's all about, communicating, talking things out. When communication stops, things get ugly. The Second Amendment is a fallback position to the First. And that, my friends, was on purpose. They didn't do it accidentally and just kind of mix them up and say, oh, well, which one are we going to make first today? No. They were specifically put in the order that they were put because the most important one was put first, the requirement that we must communicate with each other in every way. Well, that's all I have to say today. Connect the dots. Get a copy. If you don't have a copy, get a copy of Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. Get a copy of my latest book, Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order. The next time I do a broadcast, I'm going to read a little bit from that. And I just want you to understand what's going on. If you don't get it, you might as well just run around and scream and shout. What else can you do? You've got to understand how these things are connected together and where it's headed. Only we, W-E, can do anything about any of this. Spain isn't coming to rescue us. Neither is Mexico. Canada? Are you kidding? Canada's not going to rescue us. Russia's not going to rescue us. China would like to bury us. It's we and American citizens are the ones who need to hold on to our country if there's going to be a country to hold on to. And I'll tell you what, we can lose a lot of things, like in an economic crash. We can lose possessions. You can always replace possessions, friends. Don't ever forget that. Don't hold on so tightly. Oh my gosh, I lost all my possessions. I'm going to jump out of a window like they did in 1929. You could replace possessions. It's not a big deal. You may suffer for a while, but you can replace them if you work hard. You can't replace the country. If we lose the country, it's gone. There's going to be no fishing it out of the ocean. There's going to be no reconstructing it, trying to run over all these other people by then who will have completely solidified their position. The time to do anything is now. I encourage you, stand up and do something. I don't care what. Don't look to me. I'm doing my own thing for sure. I'm doing something. But you can do something too, and every American counts. Nobody should be left out of this at this point. We all have an equal right to this country and what made it great. And it would be a shame if the people who benefited so greatly did not stand up and fight for their country when it was needed. Well, that's it for today. God bless you all. We'll see you next time.